A thin veil of mist drifted across the still lake as dawn cracked open the horizon. The world was quiet, painted in soft gold and gray, the kind of silence that only belongs to early mornings and old souls. Earl Whitaker sat at the edge of his dock, a dock he'd built 50 years ago with his own hands, as his fishing line cut through the calm. His reflection trembled across the water like a memory trying to hold still. Earl was 75, a retired engineer, a man carved from patience and stories. His hands, though wrinkled, moved steady as ever, looping fishing line with the precision of habit. He wore his favorite flannel, sleeves rolled up, cap tilted just so. Beside him, an old thermos of coffee and a framed photo of Clara. His late wife, his fishing partner, his heart. Every ripple that touched the dock whispered her name. He sighed softly, whispering, "Morning, Clara." The words disappeared into mist. This lake was all he had left of her. They'd bought the land together when the town was still dirt roads and tall grass, long before the shiny houses and glossy HOA rules arrived. The lake had been their peace, their home, and in some ways their eternity. The water shimmered with the early light, and Earl smiled. Another quiet morning, another cast, another chance to remember. But peace never lasts where pride lives close by. From across the road, the distant hum of an electric golf cart echoed. 3 figures in matching polos and sunglasses rolled toward the dock like self-appointed royalty. The white cart stopped beside the water and the leader, a woman with a clipboard clenched like a sword, stepped out. "Excuse me, sir," she said sharply. "You can't fish here. This is private HOA property." Earl looked up slowly, brow furrowed. "Private?" He smiled politely. "Ma'am, this lake's been here long before those houses of yours." Her lips tightened. "Sir, this area falls under the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. That means lake access is restricted to residents and their guests." "You are?" Earl chuckled. "I'm the man who built that dock before Willow Creek was even an idea." Her face flushed. The 2 others behind her exchanged glances. "Call security," she hissed. The sound of her words carried like nails on glass. Earl turned back to his line, unmoved. "You folks always this friendly to neighbors?" Within minutes, 2 more golf carts arrived, 3 more board members, all puffed with authority. They surrounded the old man like he'd stolen something more than fish. "You're trespassing," one man barked. "We've warned people before. This is private water." Earl didn't raise his voice. He just set down his rod, stood slowly, and said, "This lake isn't yours. Never was." The woman lifted her phone. "Then the police can explain it to you." When the squad car pulled up, lights flickering red and blue against the calm water, the absurdity of it all painted the scene like a bad dream. 2 officers stepped out, one young and cautious, the other older and weary from too many pointless calls. The younger one approached. "Sir, we got a report of a man trespassing and refusing to leave private property. Is that you?" Earl exhaled, slow and steady. "That depends on who's telling the story." The HOA woman waved her clipboard. "He's sitting on HOA property, fishing without permission. We have signage posted." Earl knelt beside his tackle box and opened it carefully. From beneath the fishing lures and old tools, he pulled a worn leather folder. The edges were frayed, but inside lay something stronger than their threats: history. "Didn't think I'd need to prove it," he muttered, unfolding a yellow deed. "But here it is." The older officer leaned in. The document was dated 1975, signed, sealed, and still legible. The land, including the entire lake and 12 feet of shoreline, belonged to one Earl Whitaker. The HOA president's voice wavered. "That can't be right. The developer bought everything." The officer cut him off. "Looks like this man's property predates your development, ma'am." Earl smiled faintly. "Now, if you don't mind, I've got fish waiting." The officers exchanged a look, nodded respectfully, and left. The HOA board stood frozen, their power suddenly smaller than a ripple. Earl sat back down, cast his line, and whispered to the water, "Told you, Clara, some folks never do their homework." Later that evening, a black sedan rolled up the dirt driveway to Earl's cabin. Luke Whitaker stepped out, tall, sharp-eyed, late 30s, carrying a laptop bag and the same quiet fire his grandfather once had. "They really called the cops on you?" he asked, disbelief and anger simmering in his voice. Earl chuckled. "Over a fish, apparently." Luke sat beside him on the porch. "They think owning houses means they own history." Hum. Earl nodded. "But the lake remembers who cared for it." That night, Luke opened his laptop and dove into county archives. His jaw tightened as he read. The HOA's property lines stopped short of the water's edge. Their developer had built under an easement, not ownership. Worse, they'd recently used HOA funds to install docks and fencing on Earl's land. Luke leaned back, eyes glinting. They picked the wrong fisherman. The next few days unfolded like a quiet storm. Luke filed a cease and desist letter for illegal construction and harassment. He also requested a financial audit of the HOA, uncovering misused dues and permits filed with missing signatures. Meanwhile, word spread around town. The story of the old man who owned the lake became local legend overnight. Neighbors stopped by with coffee and words of support. Children waved when they biked past his dock. But the HOA didn't back down. Pride's a funny thing. It'll make fools double down even when the truth stares back. They filed a lawsuit claiming exclusive management rights to the lake. Luke grinned when he read the papers. "You want to fight, huh? Fine. Let's fish in court." The courtroom smelled of paper, old wood, and tension. Reporters filled the back row. Locals lined the aisles. Earl sat beside Luke at the defense table, hat in hand, eyes calm. Across the aisle, the HOA's lawyer, young, smug, and too confident, adjusted his tie like he'd already won. "Your Honor," he began. "Mr. Whitaker has repeatedly trespassed on private HOA property, disregarding community restrictions." Luke stood. His tone was soft, but each word landed like a hammer. "Correction, Your Honor. My client owns the lake. The HOA built its private property around it." He spread the old survey map on the table. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The deed, marked in bold ink, clearly showed the boundary lines. The lake, every drop of it, belonged to Earl Whitaker. The judge leaned forward. "So, the HOA filed developments on land they didn't own?" Luke nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. And they knew it." He held up printed emails, leaked from within the HOA, proving the board had been warned months earlier. They tried to pressure Earl off the land quietly to avoid embarrassment. The courtroom buzzed. The HOA lawyer stammered, trying to recover. "Your Honor, the HOA simply acted under the belief that—" "Belief," Luke interrupted, "does not replace law." He slid photos onto the evidence table, aerial shots showing docks and boat ramps intruding into Earl's property line. The judge frowned. That would constitute trespass and misuse of funds. Earl watched silently, eyes wet but proud. The courtroom's noise faded for a moment as he whispered, "You'd like this, Clara? Justice catching up." After hours of testimony, the judge returned. His tone was deliberate, heavy with finality. "This court finds that the Willow Creek HOA unlawfully built and maintained property on land owned by Mr. Whitaker. Additionally, their harassment and false claims have caused undue distress." He paused, scanning the room. "The HOA will pay damages for trespass, legal costs, and emotional harm, totaling $2 million, and remove all signage or structures from Mr. Whitaker's property immediately." Gasps filled the courtroom. Luke smiled faintly. "Told you they'd regret it, Grandpa." Earl just exhaled, slow and calm. Didn't want revenge, just wanted peace. The story spread like wildfire. HOA calls police on old fisherman. He owns the lake, became headline gold. News crews knocked on Earl's door. He refused most interviews, only saying, "I just stood up for what was right." Weeks later, locals gathered by the lake to help rebuild the dock. Even some former HOA members showed up quietly, tools in hand, shame written across their faces. No cameras, no microphones, just people trying to make things right. As they finished, Earl stood at the edge, looking at the water. The sunlight shimmered gold across the ripples. Luke carved a plaque into the post. Clara's Rest, where peace belongs. The old man smiled. Looks like home again. Months passed. The lake was renamed Whitaker Lake Preserve, officially protected from future development. The mayor handed Earl a plaque at town hall. For standing firm when truth was tested. Earl only said, "This lake never belonged to me. It belongs to everyone who respects it." Even the former HOA president, Karen McDougal, visited one evening. No sunglasses, no clipboard, just humility. "Mr. Whitaker," she said softly, "I came to apologize. I was wrong." Earl studied her, then nodded. Took courage to say that. She smiled faintly. "You taught me something. Sometimes losing what's fake helps you find what's real." She left a small jar of homemade jam on his porch before driving away. That summer, the first Whitaker Lake Festival was held. Families fished along the banks. Children painted signs. Lanterns floated on the water at dusk as Luke stood on stage. "My grandfather taught us that peace doesn't come from power," he said. "It comes from doing what's right, even when you're standing alone." Applause echoed across the lake. Earl sat quietly in his old chair, wiping a tear as fireworks lit the sky. The water reflected the colors, dancing over the dock that almost got stolen, now reborn as a sanctuary. Years rolled by. Paint faded, but the cabin still stood. Luke now brought his own children to fish, laughter spilling where anger once lived. Earl sat beside them, cap tilted, eyes glinting like sunlight on ripples. "Grandpa," one of the kids asked, "is it true you beat the HOA?" Earl chuckled softly. "No, kiddo. I just reminded them who they were supposed to be." The camera would pull back here. The lake glowing gold in the evening light. A man, a family, and a legacy of calm water finally respected. And in the quiet, a soft narration fades in. Some battles aren't fought for pride. They're fought for peace. And sometimes, peace wins.